You are listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Critical Mass Business Talk Show, Orange County's longest running business talk show. And I am your host, Rick Franzi. And man, do I have a good show planned for you today. Ron Stein, who is the author of his latest book, Clean Energy Exploitations, is here with me today. And Ron has been on our show previously. We were just talking about that many years ago when we first launched the program. Ron, thanks for coming back and being a friend of the program.
Rick, glad to be back.
So I'm excited to talk to you about your book. You know, I held up the cover. It's very provocative. It might be a little hard for people to see, but what's on the cover is a soldier with an AK-47 who's overseeing the mining of minerals in one of the developing countries in the world. Can you explain to me why you and your co-author chose this book cover? The picture
Rick,
of the cover?
the subtitle of Clean Energy Exploitations, which is helping citizens understand the environmental and humanity abuses that support clean energy, says it all. And the photo illustrates how many Africans, Asian, South American children that have yellow skin, brown skin, black skin are being enslaved and dying in mines and factories to extract and process the rare earth and exotic minerals required for solar panels, wind turbines, and electrical vehicle batteries. And we call these blood minerals, just like blood diamonds. Mm-hmm. The same, countries that they're mining for these materials with virtually non-existent environmental regulations. So wealthy nations can decarbonize and move to an all-electric society. The lack of oversight and the lack of transparency inflicts human atrocities and environmental degradation to their local communities that are beyond comprehension.
So it's a provocative photo, but it's an actual photo, is what you're saying.
It's an actual photo from Africa, yes.
This is how these... Now, why aren't these rare earth minerals mined in other parts of the world, like in the developed nations, Ron?
They're, primarily regulations. I got to get a mining permit in the United States. The labor costs are huge. The environmental regulations are huge. So it's more cost effective to do it in developing countries that, have no labor laws and very cheap labor, a lot of times slave labor. But, just for the opportunity to generate intermittent electricity that's dependent on breezes and sunshine, and to drive cars with large batteries, these EV batteries are huge. The wealthy and healthier countries like Germany, Australia, Britain, America, we're exploiting those in developing countries, again, with different colored skins. China, India, Indonesia, Japan, Vietnam, Africa, they represent representative of at least 80% of humanity that's living on less than $10 a day. And Rick, that's more than 6 billion people. And billions of those people have little to no access to electricity, all while the wealthy countries are pursuing the most expensive ways to generate intermittent electricity. The poor and the less healthy countries like China, India, and Africa, they're desperate, in need of affordable, reliable, and continuous, uninterruptible electricity for their billions of residents, and they're using coal. How dare we in the healthy and wealthy countries insist that we should limit the poor countries' future access to fossil fuels? Cheap, reliable, accessible power, and the products that we get from fossil fuels, they're life-saving and one of the best ways out of poverty. We can easily observe already what the world's poorest countries see, what lifestyles are like without the medical products, without the thousands of other products we get from oil derivatives from crude oil that benefit the richer countries. In those poor countries, there's 11 million children in the world dying every year. And those fatalities are all from preventable causes: diarrhea, malaria, diphtheria, pneumonia, and lack of oxygen at birth. Those developing countries have no or minimal access to the products from the oil derivatives enjoyed by the wealthy and the healthy countries.
So the point that you're making here on our program today, and that you and your co-author make in the book, is the unintended, or at least the unseen or thought about consequences of what feels like initiatives that are appropriate in the developed world. One being going green, and two, combating climate change. And so what it sounds like, based on the headline in the book and how you're talking and the research that you've done in your book, is there needs to be a realization in the developed countries of the impact of these initiatives globally, based on how it's being mined and developed in third world countries. Is that correct?
Exactly. We're trying to make it transparent, because you've heard that Biden's going to boycott the China Olympics because of their labor practices, but hypocritically, he's all for importing all the exotic minerals and metals so we can achieve his green goals, and they're the same labor atrocities. He should boycott the minerals and metals coming from China.
So you're making the point that countries like, you make the point in the book, like countries like Germany and Australia, and then also right here our own home state in California, who have made green and climate change a priority, also have the result is that they have some of the highest electricity costs. So I'm wondering if you could take the audience through the link between the two, green energy and then the associated energy costs that come along with that.
Yes, Germany was the first country to make the futile attempt to go green, decarbonize, and have zero emissions by an identified date. And now they have the highest cost of electricity in the world. Australia followed with their fanciful road to economic ruin and destruction by putting their faith in sunshine and breezes for the generation of intermittent electricity. And they're keeping up with Germany's quest for carbon-free society. Instead, they rely on continuous backup from other electrical generators, such as coal, natural gas, or nuclear, to provide the uninterruptible service that they cannot provide. And through wind and solar facilities, the wind and solar facilities don't pay for it, but the ratepayers are paying for this redundancy. California has and continues to shutter natural gas power plants, nuclear power plants. We've shut down one, another one's coming down in a couple of years at Diablo Canyon. And they've been providing continuous uninterruptible electricity, and they're incapable of it. The state is incapable of generating enough in-state power for our own needs. Last year, we had to import 32% of our
Motion detected at your front door.
Sorry about that. I have obviously someone at my front door, Ron.
Okay. Last year, we had to import 32% of our electricity from the Northwest and the Southwest because we couldn't generate enough in-state. And with no wind and solar power plants proposed to take up the loss of these shuttered power plants, we basically are hoping the Northwest and Southwest are going to be able to provide the power we need. If not, there's going to be shortages and increased inflation from importing expensive electricity.
Is this cost increase a temporary result of an emerging technology, or do you see it that even at scale, what you refer to as intermittent energy, solar, battery, aren't capable with today's technologies of fully replacing the current electrical grid system that's in place in many of these places?
It's a combination of two things. One is you have a redundant system because the continuous power plants are not going away. And then you're building wind or solar farms. They take money, they take a lot of subsidies. The ratepayers paying for it. So you're paying for really two systems. And one is the backup, and that's the reliable one. So, energy is more than just electricity. Electricity by itself cannot support the military, the airlines, the cruise ships, the super tankers, the container shipping. Nor can electricity alone, especially yeah, especially the fact that intermittent renewables, they cannot manufacture any of the products that make the medical products we have, the electronics we have, the fertilizers we have, and the thousands of other products that were manufactured from petroleum. They were non-existent before 1900. And now they're essential to our medical industry. They're essential to our electronics. They're essential to this communication we're having here. And, it's, cooling, heating, virtually every aspect of our daily lives is dependent on those products.
Yeah, in the book, you make the case that the crude derivatives are the basis for 6,000 products and form a big part of what we take today as a developed country lifestyle.
Exactly, because before
but
1900, 1900 was a big turning point. We invented the automobile, invented the airplane, and we really found out what we can get out of crude oil. Crude oil is basically, there's three fossil fuels. There's coal, natural gas, and crude oil. Coal and natural gas are used for electrical generation. Crude oil is virtually never used for electrical generation. It's used to manufacture something else. And that something else, half of the barrel of crude oil is used to make oil derivatives that makes 6,000 products. Everything in your office, your house, the hospital, everything you look at is made from oil derivatives. Everything that wind turbines and solar panels, they are made with oil derivatives. You get rid of crude oil and you get rid of the wind turbines and get rid of solar panels.
Research, did you find alternatives that are being developed that would replace crude derivatives in these areas over time?
Well, Rick, we've had over 100 years since we've been developing manufacturing these derivatives, and everything seems to have a clone or a duplicate manufactured somewhere, but we've been unable to come up with it. I'm all for getting rid of crude oil, but what's the plan? There's no backup plan. It's like jumping out of an airplane without a parachute. And, we basically want to go with electric vehicles, to eliminate pollution. And we're basically chastising crude oil. But electric vehicles, they have limitations. Electrical vehicles, you have to take a look. We got short range and lightweight stuff like cars and trucks. Electrical vehicle batteries might be an appropriate use for that. But when you get to the heavyweight stuff, the long range stuff like airplanes and cruise ships and the military, they're not going to run on batteries. And like I say, we've been trying to replace the derivatives, and it's going to be a major lifestyle change to go without crude oil, because everybody's going to have to turn in their iPhone and stop zooming. It's going to be a big change.
So let's be clear on the program. You are not anti any of this. What you are and your co-author trying to do in your book, Clean Energy Exploitation, is just raise the awareness of the people in the developed nations to the impact of some of these initiatives that we may not be seeing on the news or reading about.
Right. We tend to be agnostic. Like I said, we don't care which way it goes. There's no silver bullet answers. There's a place for EVs, there's a place for wind, a place for solar, a place for fossil fuels, and conservation and efficiencies is probably the main driving force of anything to make whatever we have last as long as it can. But if you take a look, we talk about those 6,000 products. As late as the 1800s, the world was already decarbonized. And we don't want to go back there, because back then, there were no coal or natural gas power plants. With the Beverly Hillbillies situation comedy referred to in the 60s, their theme song, oil that is, black gold, Texas tea. It's been discovered as something that could be manufactured into usable products. And before 1900, life was hard. It was dirty. And most people never traveled more than 200 miles from where they're born. And life expectancy was short. 20 to 30 years old. Then after oil, we created various modes of transportation. We created a medical industry. We created electronics, communications, or reduced infant mortality, extended longevity to now it's like 80 plus. And we gave public the ability to move anywhere in the world via planes, trains, ships, vehicles, and virtually eliminated deaths from most diseases and from most forms of weather. In the richer and wealthier countries, the inventions of the automobile, airplane, and the use of petroleum in the early 1900s, it led us into the Industrial Revolution and winning World Wars I and II. The healthier and wealthier countries of today now have more than 6,000 products that are part of our daily lives that did not exist just a few hundred years ago. And today, the world's, heavyweight and long-range stuff, like the ships and the aviation, they run exclusively on refined oil products. And half the world's food production relies on ammonia fertilizer produced from natural gas. So we can't, just walk away from that. Oil, reduced infant mortality and extended longevity. It really allowed the world to populate from 1 billion to its current 8 billion in less than a couple hundred years. And now we have 8 billion people. We need to be able to move food and products all over the world to feed them. And we can grow products, in different countries and move to different countries. It's amazing. There's like 56,000 merchant ships moving products all over the world.
So I'm talking with Ron Stein, who's the co-author of Clean Energy Exploitations, and we're talking about some of the content that's in his well-researched book. And you maintain in the book that climate change is a global issue and that India and China's negative impact will far outweigh any positive impacts that could be made by the US and the European Union. I'm wondering, does that mean from your perspective that the US and Europe shouldn't try?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to basically make it apparent that, because, 80% of the world is living off, $10 a day, they can't subsidize themselves out of a paper bag. But when you take a look at the healthy and wealthy countries like America, Germany, the UK, Australia, they represent about 6% of the world's population. I mean, those countries collectively are like 500 million people versus the 8 billion people in the whole world. And those wealthy countries could literally shut down, cease to exist, and the opposite of what you've been told and believe is going to take place. The biggest source of carbon dioxide emissions are in developing countries. You got to think China, India, Africa. Simply put, in these healthy and wealthy countries, every person, animal, anything that caused emissions, any manufacturing, could harmfully rise, could vanish off the face of the earth, even die off, and global emissions will still explode in the coming years. China and India, they have populations of roughly 2.7 billion people, and most of them are poor. Together, those two countries have already 1,300 coal-fired power plants. And China and India and Indonesia, they're planning on building another 600. Africa is planning on building 1,200 new coal and gas-fired power plants by 2030. The US and Europe should continue to explore methods to reduce emissions, but recognize that the manufacturing of oil products for the world's infrastructure and its 8 billion are currently indispensable. And efforts to cease the use of crude oil, the only fossil fuel that gets manufactured into usable products, could be the greatest threat to the civilization's 8 billion, not climate change.
So as we wrap up our conversation today about the research and the work that you and your co-author put into the book, what theme, message, lesson, perspective would you like to leave my audience with based on what you have learned and put together in your latest book, Ron?
Well, energy and environmental policies do impose a lot of economic stress for energy on billions, especially on low income and minority communities that can least afford it. the financial racial biasing of climate and environmental policies against the poor residents of the world is unconscionable, and it's got to be addressed. The book cover of Clean Energy Exploitation, it illustrates, how some of these countries are enslaving their people in mines and factories to meet our needs. And like I say, that's what we call these blood minerals. It's like blood diamonds. I think the message in the book is probably the primary reason it was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. It definitely wasn't English. I'm still trying to master the English language. But the message is we want to make this transparent to the public. I mean, if the public is aware of it and they're willing to keep doing that, like I say, I'm agnostic. If they're willing to, exploit those countries so we can go green, so be it. But I think the less developing countries, they're mining for their stuff and, virtually non-existent environmental regulations, and so we can decarbonize and move to our all-electric society. The lack of oversight inflicts human atrocities and environmental degradation to their local lands that's beyond comprehension. It should be addressed, made transparent to the world.
So if someone would like to learn more about the book, learn more about you as its author, where would you direct them online, Ron?
Well, my passion is to enhance everyone's energy literacy, so they can talk about it at the dinner table with friends about the energy issues that are in the newspaper, the TV, and being blasted on social media. The best way to learn about me and to further enhance their energy literacy is to check out my website. It's energyliteracy.net, energyliteracy.net. Easy access to the 3 books that Todd Royal and I have written. Op-ed articles are linked there. My op-ed articles go out weekly, and they get exposed to about 500,000 people around the world. And easy way to contact me and connect with me and be added to the distribution list. Love to share the energy literacy op-eds and make them a little bit more apparent. We do put it in layman's terms, no formulas and fancy charts or anything like that, because energy can get complicated very quickly. And so we try and keep it in layman's terms so the average citizen can talk about it with intelligence.
Well, I want to thank you for being a longtime friend and guest of the program. It's wonderful to have you back on. I'm so happy we were able to talk about your book, and thanks for being a part of our Renaissance Executive Forums community. Thanks,
Rick. Have a great day and Happy New Year to you.
You as well. I'd like to thank our audience for being a part of Ron's interview today on Orange County's longest running business talk show. Ron's episode was episode number 1334. If you'd like to connect with me on LinkedIn, please reach out. I'm Rick, R-I-C, Franzi, and you can visit my website, same thing, rickfranzi.com. And until the next time we have a chance to meet and be together, I hope all of your business decisions will move your company in a positive direction.